Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another Loom video. And this video is going to be a lot more interesting than the other ones we see because most of them are theory based. This is going to be sort of like a mini UI redesign case study where I explain sort of my thought process and the design decisions I take to design an interface, be it a redesign or be it designing something from scratch. These are the sort of questions I ask myself. And this is how I go about designing it. So I'm going to be redesigning one of Zomato's designs over here. Now, one thing I would want to mention is that I don't have a lot of context about what information the team had when they were designing this interface. I don't know what were the business goals. I don't know what sort of product decisions they were taken, why the interface was designed in a certain way. And as a result of that, my redesign is going to be based on my educated guess of what I think it should be. And I'm not saying that my design is right because there's no way to know if it's right or wrong because I don't have a lot of the true information that the designers were given when making this interface. So the entire point is that when you are working at a company, you will actually have access to the truth and the real information. And the idea is for you to understand how you take that information to form design decisions. So whatever design decisions I'm going to be taking today in this video is based on whatever assumptions and constraints that I'm setting for myself. And the idea is to show you how to work with those. It's not to design the right interface. In the case of this video, it's just to show you the thought process of designing an interface, right? So let's get into it. The first thing you want to do is when you're designing an interface is obviously to understand the goals of what the interface is, who is it used for, what is the purpose of the screen, right? So I've quickly gone ahead and made, two sort of goals. So the primary goal of the screen is to educate the user about the payment confirmation. So when the user makes a payment through Zomato Gold, this is the screen for him or her, which basically talks about, okay, this is the restaurant, this is the bill amount, this is how much you paid, congratulations for successful payment. Now that's the primary goal. The secondary goal of this screen is to educate the restaurant about the payment being made by the customer. So maybe the restaurant maybe wants to take a screenshot of this. I mean, not a screenshot, but a photo of it from the phone, or maybe they just want to see some number or a payment confirmation, whatever it is. Now, what the restaurant wants is something that I am not aware of because I'm sure they must have their own system or their software where they can check the payment confirmation, of course. So I'm not really sure what the intention or goal of this screen is for the restaurant, right? But I'm just going to make an educated guess and I say, let's assume that the secondary goal of the screen is to educate the restaurant that somebody has made a payment confirmation, right? Cool. So let's get into it. I'm going to move this over to the top. We don't want that. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And I'm going to delete everything else that we don't need because we're going to sort of build this from scratch, right? Now, the four pillars of, good foundations is colors, colors, typography, spacing, and layout. Now, I'm not going to be going, into them one by one because that's not how we design. We sort of combine them together and, then go ahead and make design decisions. It's not like you choose color first and then you go to typography and then you go to spacing. You have to do all of them together in a cohesive way. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, the first thing that I'm going to think about is my font sizes. I'm going to always start off with my body or my base font size. And I'm not going to be creating my own because I'm going to be using the same font sizes that Zomato has used. And they have used 17 pixels as their primary body font size. So I'm going to just take that, make a duplicate over here, and I'm going to call this 17 pixel. I'm going to call this body, right? Now, what is the font weight? We will get to that in a minute, but for now, let's just keep it medium. I think regular is too thin for my liking, so I'm going to make medium as my sort of level 1. And if I want to make a thicker version, I would make it semi-bold. And then if I want another thicker version, I would make it bold, right? Now, this is now, especially for this font, we have too many things, but you want to obviously pick weights where there is, a good enough contrast between two elements, contrast between two different weights. So for example, I might just play around with these two, which is a medium and a bold, or maybe I could even go with a semi-bold or a bold, but semi-bold or bold pretty much looks, they still both look heavy. So yeah, it's up to you how you want to make a decision. Just ensure that there is good contrast between two different font sizes in terms of font weights, right? Great. So for now, I'm just going to keep this one, which is, I'm going to call this 7 pixel medium as my base. And what I would want to do is sort of understand the layout as well. Now, since the primary goal is to educate the user about the payment confirmation, the problem we're facing here is that the most important information, which is for the user, isn't being shown over here. First of all, it says total bill amount, which is more than what I actually paid. Now, this can be alarming because the moment I see this as a user, I actually paid $2,445, but the screen is sort of grabbing my attention to this blue text that says 3,182, right? So that's not something that the user, would sort of be happy about. So bringing up the section which is important for the user first is what I am going to be doing in this situation, right? So if we just take a look at this section, we can focus on this. We've got a couple of data points, which is there's a tag that says this section is for you, and it says you paid, and then via the card, and this is some sort of ID number, and this is the price that I paid, the final amount that I paid, and this is some information about savings, right? Now, what I would do is obviously let's go ahead and bring in this text over here, and I will then go ahead and start editing it. So instead of saying you paid via card, I would just go ahead and say amount paid, which is a lot more simpler and transactionally. It has that transaction language. I'm just going to say amount paid, right? And I'm going to go to the right side, and then I'm going to copy this value, and I'm going to paste that as well, right? Great. Now, one of the things that I want to do is obviously have that sense of hierarchy, that sense of strength. So I'm going to increase the weight. But what I want to do is I want to show you what happens, how it looks if I don't increase the weight and I just create the text, without increasing the weight. So we have two texts over here, which is amount paid and then 2545.6. And I'm going to need the secondary information as well. Now, I don't typically need the ID number as such, but in case I have to talk to the customer care or anything for me to identify what this payment is, ID number might be helpful. Again, maybe this might be a business requirement. So I'm just going to leave it as it is and not dive into too much details. So I'm going to say amount paid this much, and then I'm going to create a secondary text. I'm going to say, I'm just actually going to copy all this, copy and paste. I'm going to say via card, which is whatever this is, right? Now, of course, we don't want these to have the same hierarchy. So I'm going to drop this down a couple of font sizes. Now, a couple of things to note is when you're playing around with typography, you always want to have a minimum of 2 pixel gap between the font size. So if this was 17, I'm going to probably make this 14. All right. And obviously when you're creating hierarchy, there are 3 ways you can do it. So I'm going to quickly point that down over here. So first one is change font size. Second is change font weight. And third one is change text opacity, right? And these are the only 3 ways you can go ahead, and of course color also comes into picture, but not all the time. Color is quite rare where we bring in to create that emphasis. But in this case, since all of them are just black colors, we want to play around with these 3 ways. And typically what you want to do is just select 2 out of 3 ways of doing it. So either you play with font size or font opacity, or you play with font size and font weight, or you do font size, font weight and font opacity. So just any of the 2 of the 3 ways are going to work. In this case, I'm going to go with the font size and the font opacity as well. Now, it's not wrong if you do all the 3, but you need to think about it and see, is it too much of an overkill or is it fine? That's sometimes a design decision you have to take. This again depends on a lot of factors like the look of the font itself, Sometimes the fonts might be constructed in a way where, you need to use all the three methods to get that. And there's no logic behind it. It's just, what do you think gets the job done and gets that visual hierarchy the moment you see it. Right? So I've reduced the font size to 14 pixels over here. And I'm also going to drop the opacity to 60%. 60% is usually the number that is recommended for secondary level font size, right? Great. So now again, what is the spacing? What should the spacing between be these two elements? Now, typically I use multiples of 4. So 4, 8, 12, right? And in very rare cases, I use 6 as well, because if I feel 4 isn't too, isn't helping enough, I might move it up to 6, right? So let's try. And also the most important thing, right? What is the spacing that you want to have between the left side? So we're going to make an assumption that we're using 16 pixels padding on the left edge and 16 pixel padding on the right edge, right? So I'm going to move this to 16 pixels, 16 and 16 here as well. And again, so let me just go ahead and move this. No, right now it's 7. So let's move this by 4, and maybe it's too much, right? So the other thing you want to do is you want to do a little bit of trial and error and see what is the best spacing. So if I grab all this together, I can move this down, and I'm going to make it 6, right? And I'm going to make this 8. Now, which of these do you think, is the best, which isn't too tight, which isn't too wide away as well, right? Now, this is how you sort of want to play around when you're learning UI design, because you want to develop the eye for design. Now, in this case, I'm going to scrap this idea because I think 4 or 6 works, right? Now, the other thing that I could do is I would go ahead and duplicate this and reduce the font size of this even more. So you want to have a maximum of 4 pixel difference. So if this is 17, we want to drop this to, oh, sorry, this must be 15, my bad. Right, all this is supposed to be 15. Got it, right, yeah. So if this is 4, this would be 6, this would be 4, this would be 6, right? Now, as you can see, 15 and 17, they don't really have much of a difference. So I'm going to drop them by another 2 pixels, which is 13, right? Now, looking at these two, 13 looks a little bit better for me. And so I'm going to go with that. Now, I'm going to get rid of this. Now, again, over here, which one should we pick? The one with 4 pixel spacing, the one with 6 pixel spacing. Again, this becomes something that you sort of have to think about, whatever you feel works for you. Now, I prefer to have it 4 pixel. Maybe you like 6 pixel. So I'm just going to get rid of 6 pixel for now. I'm going to go with this because I think this is fine. Maybe actually, you know what? I think we can keep it. Let's actually do one more thing, right? So let's bring this over here. Let's duplicate this. And now let's give it another level of hierarchy by bumping up the font weight. So I'm going to go from medium to semi-bold, right? Or if you go to bold, is it too much? I guess bold is too much. So I'm going to make it semi-bold, right? So now we get to see even more hierarchy. As you can see over here, we can see a little bit more hierarchy. And now I think because we increase the font weight, we want to space them out a little bit more so that we don't feel items are too crowded. So I'm going to go with this. So we have semi-bold, and then we have 4 pixel difference, which is from 17 to 13. And then we have medium and also a lower opacity. So I'm going to delete all of this. And this is going to be my main group. This is going to be my first level of text. Okay. So we're going to group this. We've got amount paid via card. And then we have this information. Fantastic. Right? Great. Now, the other thing is payment to which restaurant, right? So obviously when you're paying, you have the name of the person or the restaurant or the third party which you're paying to, and that should be also given quite high emphasis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate these two, and it says pay to Pasta Street, the name of the place, and then we have this icon, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say Pasta Street, okay, Pasta Street. And I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this information and paste it over here, right? Great. Now, let's say obviously we have this icon as well, which is this this check icon. Now, if I bring this to the side, and so let me actually put them together. So let me group these two together. All right, and then I'm going to bring them over here. And the other thing I'm going to do is I just want to add like this simple divider to the nav bar. So I use an interesting way where I use inner shadow. So I'm going to go choose inner shadow, and then I'm going to say Y is -1, blur is 0, and then this is around 12 pixels, right? And of course we need to add a fill color to see that. So this is another way you can add a divider yourself, but this is what I want to do. And how do I decide the spacing between the top and the bottom? Of course, you want to play around. So let's start with 16, right? 16 might seem a little too close. So I'm going to bump that up to maybe 20, right? Or maybe even 24 if I like it. So let's try 24 for now and see how this looks. So, right, got 24 over here. Maybe 20 works, right? I'm going to bring this also up again. Now, how much is the distance? Again, 24 pixels might be too near, or let's try 16, right? 16 is of course too near. 24 maybe better. 28. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 24 for now, but again, I might be wrong. The thing is, again, over here, these two elements seem very close to each other. So the thing is, we're not getting enough hierarchy over here, because which is the heading or the title of this particular screen. Of course, it says payment status, but for the rest, we do need some sense of hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is here for pass the state, since this is 17, I'm going to bump this up by maybe 2 or 4 pixels, right? So if I make this 19, right, we get some sense of visual hierarchy. If I make this 21, we get an even more sense of visual hierarchy, which I think is totally fine. It looks great. Now I'm going to move this down, of course, because that's too close to the main. So I'm going to move this around 6 pixels, right? If I move it 4 pixel, might feel a little too near, right? But I'm just going to make it 6. But again, up to you, 4 or 6. So just a 2 pixel difference, up to you to figure out. Now again, this still doesn't feel that good enough or great, right? And maybe I feel even 21 is too much. I'm going to drop that down 2 pixel. But 19 again looks very similar to 17. So I'm going to bump that up again to 21. So the other thing I want to do is I want to change the layout over here. So this is where the layout part comes. So I'm going to bring this icon over here. And of course, we want to sort of ensure that it's properly rounded. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to move this over here, of course, 16 pixel and 24 from the top. And I'm going to bring this over here. Again, here, what is the spacing? We have to eyeball it. So you start with what is 2 less, which is, let's say 8. I mean, 8 might be 2 less. So maybe we move that to 12. I think 12 is also good. But then you got to check up with this as well, right? You want this to be consistent. So if we're making this 24, these two feel very close to each other. So maybe we bump that up to 12 to 16, and maybe this looks a lot better. Let's try 20. How far can you go until it looks bad, right? 20 also looks great. 20 looks nice. But maybe I'm going to make this 16. So this is something you sort of have to play around with and get it. Yeah, actually, I'm going to make it 20. I think that's great. Right, so we have something like this. Now they've used all sorts of these colors, like too many colors over here. So you don't want to use color unless you have to, right? So that's one thing you always want to keep in mind. Great. So now if you look at let's sort of go ahead and create our type scale. So we've got a 17 pixel body. Now we've not really used that anywhere over here. So we're going to use the ones that we have, which is 17 pixel semi-bold. All right. We've also got 13 pixel medium, right? So we're going to say 13 pixel medium. This is our secondary. And then we've got one, which is our, like a H1 title, which is 21 pixel semi-bold, right? So 21 pixel semi-bold title 1, right? I'm going to go ahead and just paste these values. Right. So we have some sense of hierarchy as what we are doing over here. And for now, I've just used 3 font sizes and 3 different font weights to get what we need. Right. That's it. It's as minimal as you can. And as you can see, they've used quite a lot of things over here as well. This is a different font weight. This is a different font weight. This is a different font size, font weight. Too many. Right. So don't do that. Great. let's go forward. We have this information that says you saved, you know, this much rupees. So I'm going to just grab that information and put that over here, right? And obviously we're going to make this edge to edge. Let me quickly check. So this is 6 pixels. So 16 plus 6 is 22. So 22 and 22. Okay. I'll probably move this to the center. Perfect. Okay. Now there are so many things that we can do over here. Right now, maybe this looks fine, right? Maybe this does look a lot fine, but it might change. Oh, I'm going to make this black. Now this, like I said, this might look fine, but the thing is, once we add more elements, it might not look fine. So let's actually go ahead and do that. And then we can come back and see if you want to make any more changes to this. So I'm going to come here to this section, which is, it says this section is for the restaurant. I'm actually going to grab this entire section and sort of throw that in here. Okay. Now here again, should we use a different padding, which is 16? I mean, which should we use something else other than 16? Maybe not. But I think it's good to respect the padding that we have on either side. So I'm going to make this 16 and I'm going to ensure that the right side also is 16. Now let's remove the elements that we don't need. So we don't want these 3 elements. We can get rid of these elements because that information is already over here. So payment details, obviously paid to pass the street. And for some reason, I think I want to move items a little bit closer, just feeling that, looking at everything. So maybe I'm going to make this 16 and maybe make this also 20 rather than 16, and maybe move this also a little bit closer. I think 28 or 32, right? 32 is fine. Now the other thing is, when I'm talking about this spacing, let's go ahead and, you know, write some numbers over here. So if you get all the multiples of 4, right? So you say 4 and then 8 and then 16. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and 32, 36, 40, right? Now the thing is, just because you're using multiple of 4 doesn't mean you can randomly use any of these, right? You always want to create some sort of a constraint here as well. So typically the way I do is, for elements that are text which are supposed to be together, I typically and if I'm just going to write this down, I say text, I make this 4 to 6 to 8. This is the max I will use. But actually in this case, I'm just going to say 4 to 6, right? This is what I'm going to define. Spacing between 2 other sections. Okay. So if I just go sections, right, I want to choose a different number. So let's say inner sections, because let's say they're part of the same thing. So inner sections, I might say, what have we used over here, right? We've used around 20 and here around 32, right? So I'm going to say 20 and 32, right? Now the next is the distance between the sections itself. Let's say, for example, we're taking this as one section and this section is for the restaurant as another section itself. I might choose like a number that is bigger than 32. So I might choose, if I type in main section, I might choose something like 40 or 48, right? So if you sort of define this right in the beginning, when you're designing a little bit of the interface, you won't then have to choose, should you choose 12? Should you use 24? Should you choose 28? No. All these are still multiples of 4, but doesn't mean you can randomly use whichever these you want. Just like font sizes, it's not that you have to use every single font size with a breakup of 2, because right here, as I showed you, we just used 17 and 13. That's it. We didn't use 14. We didn't use 11. We didn't use 20. Numbers that are bigger than 21. So set your constraints, because the more number of constraints you set for yourself, the more simpler or easier it is for you to design your interface, and it's going to look great for sure, right? So I'm going to use this also as some sort of a guide for me, right? Anyway, so this section is for the restaurant. That's perfect. Total bill amount. Obviously, this is now going to be the primary information of this section, and I don't really feel it needs to be blue. If we can get the job done with black, then that should be great. So I'm actually going to just copy this entire section, and, bring that over here. Okay, and I'm going to say total bill amount. total bill amount. All right, and this is going to be 3182.00. Okay, and of course here it says via card, but what are the secondary informations for this section? Of course, we have the time and the confirmation code. Now here, a couple of things, right? So let's take the confirmation code, and I'm just going to copy this and paste that over here, right? If I just, okay, let me actually ungroup all of this so that becomes easy. Oh God. Ungroup, great. And we'll get rid of this section is for the restaurant as well for now. And let's focus on these items, right? Total bill amount 3182, confirmation code. Now, should confirmation code be the same hierarchy as total bill amount? I don't know. Let's see how it looks, right? And also in this case, it's not about how it looks. Should it have the same hierarchy? The idea is to help the person who's looking at it, in this case it's the restaurant person, to quickly understand what the confirmation code is. Maybe he's just trying to match something from your screen to his software, right? So that could be the case. Now we also have another data point, right, which is over here, which is paid successfully at so and so times. I'm going to throw in that as well. Now there are so many permutations and combinations that you can do. I'm going to move all this down. I'm going to delete all this actually, and sort of decide what is the right thing to do. Now, one of the options, actually, let me put these in auto layout, so it's easy to play around, right? So I'm going to make the same thing, this and this, the same font size. Now, is this sort of too much on the eyes? I guess so. It is. Like making confirmation code 1685 the same hierarchy as this is a little bit too much, right? So let's drop this down a little bit more. So we want to reduce the hierarchy, so let's reduce this by 2 pixels, 15. Is this good enough, right? But again, you have like 3 different font sizes over here, and you know, it's just not easy on the eyes, right? It's just not easy. It's still too much information that you can see that big, thick bunch of text on the top and then the single thin line at the bottom, right? Maybe you could try another variation where we could duplicate this. Let me. So over here, we reduce the opacity of this, right? But again, this doesn't look great. It's just, you know, design, you know, we're not putting enough thought into it. You just can't randomly use this, okay? So let's drop this a bit further. So let's make this 13, right? And make this semi-bold. Now, should this be semi-bold, to be honest? I'm not sure. So let's try another variation. So I'm going to move all this over to the side, okay? Since we're playing around with this one, let me try to space these two. So let's say if I make this around 12 pixel and we put these two elements together, but this element separately, maybe even make this 16, right? This feels disconnected with this because there is nothing else the paid successful information has proximity with, right? So this feels like, you know, an orphan child. So what I would do is I would just, you know, make sure that both of these are secondary. Just make that very simple. Make that secondary and make this 8 pixel or 6, or what was the number? Yeah, we want to make this 6 pixels. Oops, sorry. Yeah, make this 6. Now, of course, the confirmation code does need a little bit of emphasis, a little bit. So what we could do is just select this and make this semi-bold, or maybe make it bold. I don't know. Bold or semi-bold, I think let's make it bold. You can leave it as bold, right? But again, does it feel it's competing for attention? Maybe. So maybe I'm going to try semi-bold. So I'm still playing around and figuring out what is the right way to go about it. And I think this looks pretty fine for me, okay? Now, of course, maybe once we put it with the entire interface and then we check again, we might have to make changes, right? Because you just can't look at this one section and make a decision. You need to see how this looks in context with the entire interface. So I'm going to delete all of this that we made. All right. Oh, oops. Okay. Right. And I'm going to bring this section, which is this section is for you. Okay. Ensure we have 16 pixels on both the sides. And this is in the center, and this looks fine. Now, what is the section spacing? Now that's for us to choose. So we choose 40 or 48. as the number. So I'm going to go play safe and move this to 48 pixel, which looks fine. Now they have used some sort of a green color. Now the thing is, let's actually add that green color and see how it is. So I'm going to bring this over here, and of course we want to move this 16 pixels inside as well, right? Because obviously we want that spacing to be even, 16 pixel here and 16 pixels over here. Move this one in as well. So I'm just going to say this space between, and great. Awesome, cool. Now let's add that background, right? I'm just going to add that background for now, and I'm going to pick the same color that we have, right? Now, if you look at this entire screen, the whole point is that this is the first thing that we want the user's attention to fall on. But the moment we add this green, this sort of gets attention as well. This section is competing with this section for attention. So one thing we could do is we could just, get rid of the green color, right? We could just make it white color, okay? And add some sort of a stroke, simple stroke, and drop this to 12. And I think the text color we are using is 1C, 1C, 1E. And I'm going to add that same color as well, right? Now this doesn't look as attention grabbing as the top section, which is basically what we are trying to go for, right? Now again over here. So again, what is the spacing? So if it is 16 over here, should we make this 16 as well, right? Maybe 16 is too close. Let's try 20, right? This is 20 good enough? I think, right? Because, because over here, but again, I'm not sure, because over here we've got around this section is too tight, and then this section is not, it's a little bit spaced out. So maybe 16 works. I don't know, right? So let's put in more elements and see how it is. But then the thing is, when you have elements that are too text heavy together, you typically want to space them out, like just like we did over here, right? Because if we move this very close to this, it doesn't really look, good. It just feels too text heavy. So we will space them out. The higher the font size and the font weight, the more denser it becomes. You want to space elements out a little bit more. That's like a neat trick. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and make this 20. I think 20 is good, right? And of course, again, we want to use the numbers, that we use common oftenly. Of course, it's not that you have to use these numbers itself. Sometimes these numbers might change. So I've used 20 for now, which works fine. Because I feel based on this font size this is, but maybe we could throw in a 16 here as well, right? But again, the more, this is where, you have the problem of having too many options and not knowing what to choose. If you have less options, it helps you to make a decision easily. If you have more options, it becomes harder. So if you have 16, 20, and 32, what should you choose, 16 or 20? You don't know. So let's set that constraint and say any intersection is 20. And we could use 20, for, all the inner spacings, right? That helps you make decisions faster and easier. Okay. Now the next thing is this verify authenticity information. So I'm just going to quickly grab this. Grab it. I'm going to bring that over here. Okay. Perfect. Now, what should be the font size of this information, right? 12. Should it be the same hierarchy as this? I don't know. Should it be the same hierarchy as this? I think it should not be. So I'm going to drop this from 13. I'm going to drop this to 11, right? Now, regular for me is obviously, too thin. So obviously I'm going to make this medium because that's the lowest I'm willing to go. All right. And obviously we want to group all these items together, group them together. So I'm using auto layout over here and auto layout this as well, and then choose space between, right? So now again, 16 on the left, we want to maintain that consistency, and obviously here as well, we want to move this over here, 16, and obviously we could shrink this down so that it sort of suits our needs, right? Now, what should be the spacing? Again, let's try 16, okay? This is definitely too close, right? How far can we go until it starts looking bad? So let's make this 20. Looks a little bit better. Let's make it 24. Okay, looks even better, right? It does look better, and obviously you want to make sure the distance is sort of optically the same. I think 20 pixel looks the same. So if you look at it, it looks nice, but I think we can still create some sort of hierarchy or emphasis in this section itself, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some spacing, right? So I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to add in like an inner padding of 16 and 16, and I'm going to add 16 on the top and the bottom as well. Okay. And now I'm going to add some sort of like a gray color to it, which helps like, you know, to give that sense of hierarchy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the fill, and we're going to put that font which is 1C, 1C, 1E, and I'm going to drop the opacity to like 3 pixels, right? And now we want to space this evenly. So typically optically it should look same from the top and bottom. It's not always that the numbers have to match, right? We can optically make it. If I make this 24, it looks the same, even though the value, so here it's 20 and here it's 24. So optically, if you look at it from far away, they do look that the distance is the same, even though the values are different. So that's okay. You want to optically align things. And of course, we're going to take this and, you know, bring this in. And obviously, we're going to make this 8 and 8 the corners. So yeah. So now we get some sense of hierarchy over here. Now, maybe you might feel that it is still too text heavy. So let's try, if you want to make this, move this to 24, and you want to make this also, you know, 24. And obviously we have to increase the size of this. It's up to you. You sort of have to figure out till when, you know, how much, if you increase it, will it look bad? How much is too much, or how less is too less? So I'm going to go back and keep it 20. I think 20 was looking fine as such. Okay, it didn't look that text heavy either, right? So 20, and this is 24, which is fine. That 4 extra pixels gives that extra spacing, which looks fine, I guess. Of course, and you want to make this 8 and 8, right? So this is our section. Now, the other thing here is this. Should this be solid green, or should it be another color? You know, maybe we try this color and we give this 1C, 1C, 1E, right? Of course, let's actually try to bring this in. Of course, make this 8 and 8, right? Is this good? I don't know. Which element is getting hierarchy? Obviously, total bill amount is the section that's getting hierarchy in this particular card, right? So can we increase the color of this, right? So actually, let me not do it this way. So copy this and paste this. So if I increase the color of this, it's not going to look great. It's not great, right? So if we apply this color, right? Let's say I apply this color, and then we make this green. Is this good enough? I don't think so. I don't think we're getting that hierarchy, because this part is the section of this card. And are we able to get that hierarchy? I don't think so, right? So if we go ahead and then, you know, inverse the colors, so make this green and then make this green. Now we get some sense of visual hierarchy, right? But then now we might feel that the elements, for some reason, elements feel so close together just because the color is more darker and more denser, right? So maybe I will increase this to 24 pixels. And obviously this also, we would want to increase it to 24, right? And select this here, right? So this looks a lot better. Here again, should this be 16? Right? I don't know. Is it too close, or is it fine? I think 20 was good. So let's just keep this as it is. We could grab this and 48, right? So let's make it 40. Do the sections feel too close together? Maybe. So I'm going to, you know, bump this up to 48. So this is how you play around, trial and error, to get that eye for design. And the other thing here is, I think they're using different numbers, 2, and I'm using 4. I'm using 8. So maybe we want to make everything 4. So I'm just going to make everything 4, 4 and 4, right? I think this looks more uniform. Great. Now the last thing is, how would you rate your pass the state experience? I'm just going to copy that information. I'm not going to be editing this too much. I'm just going to drop that in over here. And also you want 48, right? You want consistent spacing. Great, right? No, this in. Whoa, okay, give me a second. Paste. We can get rid of this. We can get rid of this actually. Yeah. Hold on, sorry. Yeah. I'll make this 16. 48. Yeah, okay. Just select this and clip content. Okay. Yeah, this looks a lot better. Right now, but I don't know. For me, a couple of things look really weird here. Because it's just 3 sections sort of getting like equal emphasis. I don't know, what are the things that we could do, right? And typically these two sections are, is like the primary. If you compare it with this is not really primary. This is probably the secondary or tertiary level action. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and create some sort of a divider over here. Okay, we'll make this 1C, 1C, 1E, and make this 12, and maybe add some, maybe like 4 pixel divider. Again, what should be the spacing over here? Let me try to make this 40, and I think 40 looks and works, right? I don't think it looks that bad. And again here, let me try to make this 40. I'm going to push this down, and I'm going to make this 40 as well, right? I think this looks fine. So now we can get some clear indication that these 2 sections are one part and this is another one. But if you see over here, optically this section looks less compared to this section optically, even though the values are the same, 40 and 40. So I'm going to drop this down to 32, right? And now they look optically correct, right? So sometimes just using random numbers, even like the same numbers, might not make sense. So you typically want to go ahead and optically align them, but ensuring you're repeating the same numbers that you're using across, right? You don't want to use too many spacing values. Just use the ones that are, that you commonly use. So if you're using 36 instead of 32, just make sure you use 36 instead of 32 wherever you want to use 36, right? So yeah, this is fine. 40 again, right? I'm going to maybe drop this down to 10 also as well. So yeah, there are so many more things. This is a complicated screen, so I might have to put a lot more time to design something that works, right? Now the other thing here is that this box is sort of out of place. It just feels out of place, right? This feels like there are too many lines. So what I would rather do is I would sort of get rid of that stroke, okay, and add in a fill and make sure that the fill is the same color as this, right? Now, of course, now with that problem, we sort of want to move this together inside. So 16 and 16 and move this to the center, right? Perfect. What should be the distance over here, right? Now 32. I don't know. Like if you look at this section is supposed to be a part of this section, but it feels that it's a part of the section below. So I'm going to move this up until I feel it looks good. So I think 24 looks good, right? Or I don't want to make it 28 because that's again adding a new number. So 20 and 24 looks good, which means we might have to push up all this by 8 pixels to get that 40. This looks fine. Maybe I could add another simple stroke of this color and maybe drop that to like 10%, right? Or maybe not 10, maybe 24%, right? Yeah, we're getting some dimension, but then again, we see too many, lines over here. which might not be the best. I'm going to make this 4, obviously, right? So now there's a lot more questions you can ask. Can you actually section, like we used background color over here, can we differentiate that section over here, make this section a different color and make the rest a different color? Now, of course, we could do that. So for example, if I would go ahead and make a duplicate of this, we could try something very interesting. So instead of this divider, I would create like a box and bring that down. Of course, we want to make sure that the values are the same. So let's say we make it 40. And I'm going to say 1C1E and make this 3%, right? So now we've created hierarchy in sort of a different way. So if I make this even like 3, right? Based on the background, we've created a little bit more visual hierarchy, right? So there's a lot of design decisions that you might have to take and iterate and play around with, but this is typically how you make design decisions. You trial and error, you see what works great and play with the constraints. Do not just randomly use too many spacing values, okay, unless you really think it's needed, right? Play around with what you have, with the same font sizes, with the same font weights. Like typically, if you see over here, I haven't used too many font sizes, right? So we've got one which is 17, which I'm using everywhere. We've got 13, which is medium, so that's sort of 2 font sizes. We've got another one which is title, which we're using only once, so that's okay. Here is another one, so typically just 4 font sizes, right? So 10, 13, 17, and 21. So I don't even want to consider this because this is a one-time use case. Here again, we've got 15, right? Now, of course, again, what should this font size be? If we made it 13, would it be too small? I don't think so. 13, it looks fine. 13, seems good, right? But again, if I make this 13 medium, would that be too thin? Maybe, because, we want this to have more hierarchy than this, but less hierarchy than this, right? So I'm going to make this semi-bold. Does this look fine, right? Trial and error, check it out. I think this looks good, right? Perfect. Here again, this is what, 13. I'm going to drop this to be 13. Obviously, this has to be 11. Yeah. Great. And I want to make this also 11, right? Now, again, what should your CTAs be? Should they be bigger or should they be smaller? I think this is fine, right? Because we could make this entire button tappable to sort of get into the next screen, which has verify. So I think that should be fine. Now, CTAs, would you want to make them semi-bold, right? Semi-bold looks fine. It's okay, right? It's fine. But, if you make it medium, is it going to be a big difference? Maybe not, right? So these are the questions you need to ask. Look at it visually, right? Try to play with the constraints, try to use the certain values that you've sort of set for yourself and only deviate if you have to. Like I said, the lesser you have, the easier it is to make decisions. The more number of options you have, the more complicated it sort of becomes, right? So iterating and, visual design is not as easy as it seems. This is obviously a complicated screen because, right? And, when you're designing interfaces, obviously you start off with smaller elements like cards, or screens which have very less content, develop that eye for design, and then you could then go ahead and start creating this complicated screens. So hopefully this video was helpful to give some sort of idea, some sort of context, some tips and tricks. If you did, let me definitely know. Definitely let me know. And if you have any questions, I will see you guys on Discord.